You probably think Jessica Alba's divorce is just another polite, amicable Hollywood split where two pretty people drift apart and issue a beige press release about remaining best friends. That is exactly what they want you to believe. But if you actually pull the court filings from the Los Angeles Superior Court and line them up with the financial timeline of the Honest Company, a completely different story emerges. We are not looking at a simple, conscious uncoupling here. We're looking at a potential financial bloodbath involving a $600 million fortune, a missing prenuptial agreement, and a spousal support demand that could cost Jessica $2 million a year for the rest of her life. Everyone knows the fairy tale. The movie star meets the production assistant on the set of Fantastic Four, they fall in love, build a family, and stay scandal-free for nearly 2 decades. But that narrative has been crumbling for years, hidden in plain sight behind carefully curated Instagram posts. Today, we're going to answer the 3 questions that explain why this marriage actually ended. First, why did they really wait until 2025 to pull the plug when the cracks were visible years ago? Second, what is the specific jealousy loop that Cash Warren admitted to, and how did it poison the relationship from the inside out? And third, the $600 million question. What exactly happens to Jessica's empire if the rumors of no prenup are true? I've got the filings, the timestamps, and the receipts that turn this perfect romance into a cautionary tale about power, money, and the roommate phase. Let's start with the emotional decay, because you cannot understand the money fight until you understand why the leverage shifted. The public narrative is that Jessica and Cash simply grew apart. But if you look at the transcript from her appearance on the BDA Baby podcast just months before the separation, Jessica handed us the blueprint of the collapse. She didn't use the word divorce then, but she used a word that is arguably worse for a romantic partnership. She called it the roommate phase. She explicitly described a dynamic where the romance evaporates after 2.5 years, leaving two people who are just checking boxes and managing logistics. That is not a red flag. That is a siren. But the rot goes deeper than just boredom. We have to talk about the power dynamic. When they met in 2004, Jessica was the rising it girl, and Cash was a production assistant. That is a classic Cinderella story reverse. But over the last 15 years, Jessica didn't just stay a movie star. She became a business mogul. She built the Honest Company, took it public, and at one point held a stake worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Meanwhile, Cash has been successful in his own right with Pair of Thieves, but there's a massive gap between successful sock entrepreneur and global icon. And according to Cash's own admission on the Wind Down podcast, that gap has been a problem since the very beginning. He admitted that 4 years into their relationship, they actually broke up. Why? Because he was consumed by jealousy. He was jealous of the attention she got from other men, and he didn't like feeling like the accessory. He claimed he worked through it, that he found a way to be her biggest cheerleader. But psychology tells us that kind of deep-seated insecurity doesn't just vanish. It often mutates. When your wife goes from being the girl on the poster to the CEO running the boardroom, that cheerleader role gets harder to play if your own ego isn't bulletproof. We saw this play out in the timeline. As the Honest Company faced lawsuits and valuation drops, the stress on the marriage compounded. You can trace the tension. Every time Jessica had to pivot to save her company, the date nights she talked about got pushed aside. She admitted that they stopped prioritizing their connection because the business and the kids took over. So when the separation date of December 27th, 2024 finally hit the court documents, it wasn't a sudden event. It was the inevitable expiration date of a relationship that had been running on fumes and logistics for a decade. The roommate comment wasn't a joke. It was a confession. They were effectively business partners running a household. And when the business of the marriage stopped making sense, the partnership dissolved. Now, this brings us to the most shocking part of this entire saga, the money. And this is where the amicable mask completely falls off. According to multiple reports surfacing around the February 2025 filing, Jessica Alba and Cash Warren do not have a prenuptial agreement. Let that sink in. One of the wealthiest self-made women in Hollywood who built a consumer goods empire might have walked down the aisle without protecting her future assets. In California, this is a nuclear scenario. California is a community property state. That means anything earned, built, or acquired during the marriage is generally considered 50-50 property. You might be thinking, wait, didn't she start the Honest Company after they got married? Yes, she launched it in 2012. They married in 2008. That means the entire lifespan of the Honest Company, every dollar of equity, every stock option, every valuation spike happened inside the marriage. Without a prenup stating otherwise, Cash Warren arguably has a claim to half of her stake in that company. We're talking about a fortune estimated between $300 and $500 million, depending on the market. And it gets messier. Reports from legal insiders suggest that Cash Warren could be seeking spousal support. The number floating around is $2 million a year. Why would he need support if he has his own company? Because in California family law, it's about the marital standard of living. If Jessica was the primary earner who funded their lavish lifestyle, the vacations, the multiple homes, the staff, he is entitled to maintain that standard of living even after the divorce. This is the lifestyle maintenance trap that catches so many high-earning women in Hollywood. We saw it with Kelly Clarkson, we saw it with Mary J. Blige, and now we're seeing it with Jessica Alba. The amicable filing citing irreconcilable differences is standard procedure, but behind closed doors, the forensic accountants are likely tearing through 15 years of financial records. If he helped support her career by managing the home or the kids while she built her empire, his lawyers will argue that his contribution was essential to her wealth creation. That $2 million figure isn't just a number. It's a calculation of what he believes he is owed for playing the supportive husband role for 16 years. This financial reality completely reframes the jealousy narrative we discussed earlier. If Cash struggled with being in her shadow emotionally, the settlement is where the score gets settled financially. It's a brutal but common dynamic in high-stakes divorces. The less famous spouse often uses the court system to reclaim the power they felt they lost during the marriage. It's not necessarily malicious, it's just business. And for Jessica, this is the ultimate reality check. She spent years building a brand based on honesty and safety, but her own financial safety net appears to have a massive hole in it. The expectation is that she was the savvy boss babe who had it all figured out. The reality is that she might be writing checks to her ex-husband for the next 20 years because she didn't sign a piece of paper in 2008. And there's one more layer to this timeline that changes how we look at the moving on phase. We need to talk about the timing of her new chapter. By August 2025, reports started swirling that Jessica was dating again, specifically linked to Danny Ramirez. This isn't just gossip, it's a signal. In the world of celebrity PR, you do not let romance rumors fly unless you're confident your legal standing is secure, or unless you're trying to send a message. Dating a younger actor is the classic Stella got her groove back move, but it also serves a strategic purpose. It signals to the public and to the ex that the emotional bond is severed. It's a hard pivot from the "we're still family" narrative. When you look at the photos of her from late 2025, the vibe has shifted. The stress that was visible during the Honest Company IPO struggles seems to have lifted. This suggests that perhaps the settlement is already done in principle, or she has simply decided that the cost of freedom is worth the price tag. But the Danny Ramirez connection also answers the question of why now? Often, a marriage can limp along in the roommate phase for decades. It usually takes a catalyst to force the paperwork. Whether that catalyst was meeting someone new or simply realizing that she still had a second act left in her, the timeline suggests that 2025 was the year Jessica decided she was done compromising. She chose to blow up the perfect family image to save her own happiness, even if it costs her a fortune. So where does this leave us? The summary is stark. Jessica Alba and Cash Warren were the poster couple for making it work. But the reality was a slow-motion collision between a skyrocketing career and a traditional marriage dynamic that couldn't support it. The no prenup revelation turns us from a sad breakup into a high-stakes corporate dissolution. We learn that the roommate phase is a warning sign you should never ignore. And we learn that in California, yours becomes ours the moment you say I do without a contract. The insider takeaway here is simple. Success complicates love. The very ambition that made Jessica Alba a billionaire is likely the same force that destabilized the equilibrium of her marriage. She outgrew the relationship both financially and spiritually, and now she is paying the exit fee. If you want to understand the exact legal playbook Cash Warren's lawyers are likely using to go after that spousal support, and how other stars like Britney and Adele protected themselves or didn't, you need to watch the next video in our Fresh Celebrity Tea playlist. We break down the divorce industrial complex and show you exactly how the money moves when the love runs out. Click right here to see who really won the biggest settlements in Hollywood history.